Let's start with the one that everyone was talking about all day yesterday, the triple byline piece you were a part of with Seth Wickersham and Don Van Natta as to why Belichick did not get the job in Atlanta. Do you want to walk me through your reporting on why he did not get the job in Atlanta, Jeremy?
Well, certainly it was a long process. It started really with Bill Belichick meeting with Arthur Blank for a first interview on a yacht somewhere exotic around the Grenadines or wherever it was. I forget offhand, but it was a situation where he came out of that meeting feeling pretty good. Talking to people close to Belichick, it seemed like there was some momentum. That momentum shifted over time, where the people with the Falcons front office essentially voted Bill, as we were told, off the island. Just because they kind of had a straw poll of sorts. Several people were involved in the process after they had really had an extensive interview process, interviewed more than a dozen candidates. Raheem Morris, they were blown away by him, so he was clearly the favorite. They had some other coordinators like Mike McDonald, Bobby Slowick in Houston, who made quite the impression. And so Belichick really wasn't strongly in the mix after those results. And you couple that, with our reporting on Robert Kraft, Patriots owner, and the correspondence he had, the chats he had with Arthur Blank, the Falcons owner. Those are two owners who were very close and talk often and speak in candor. And so, certainly the allegation we make is that, Kraft expressed or conveyed some untrustworthiness in that of Belichick in that process.
Any details as to what Belichick was untrustworthy about, Jeremy?
Well, certainly that's a great question. And we didn't have the exact wording there, but I think over time, it's been fairly well documented that the relationship, had its cracks in the surface, in the foundation. And, it's one of those things where it seems like trust had been a little broken over time, probably on both sides, and so that was something that was tough to reconcile. And so, but exact wording of what was said still unclear, except for the fact there was a note in the story about how it was conveyed that I won't often have a warm conversation with Bill Belichick, if at all. It's just that's the nature of it. And Arthur Blank and the Falcons wanted something more collaborative. That seemed to have been the trend in the hiring process this cycle. Owners clearly targeted either young up-and-comers or offensive or defensive coordinators who could step in and work closely with the GM, in this case, Terry Fontenot in Atlanta, be collaborative, have sort of a atmosphere that's inclusive. And our reporting said that Belichick was certainly open to that and open to working with Fontenot. But, the belief is that he has done a job a long time for a certain way, and it's hard to stray from that when you're used to doing it that way. And that might have been a problem for some in the building.
Well, Jeremy Fowler here from ESPN on the Rich Eisen Show. I was waiting to see in the piece, and I'm happy now to have you here so I can ask you any details from the Belichick camp on how long Bill would have been a head coach for the Atlanta Falcons or any of the teams that could have hired him this year. And I understand his age is advanced for hiring a head coach in the NFL for sure. But just the notion that he would only give a couple years or only wants to be there long enough to break Don Shula's record kind of doesn't sound like him, to be straight up.
Right.
And I'm just wondering, did either of you or your colleagues ask anyone in the Belichick camp for details on what Bill's plans would be if he's hired? Certainly, if next year he's in the mix for that gig.
Yeah, and that's a good point, because I do feel like, and we heard from several teams who had mentioned that his age was a factor when they were evaluating all candidates across the entire league. And, it's probably an easy out in some ways. Maybe it's just a way to say you don't want to hire him. And, we had a source saying with the Falcons that if he was 63 years old, maybe it was a different story. We didn't hear an exact timeline for Belichick, but I do remember talking to a source close to him who said that he's pretty rejuvenated. He's in good shape. Like, there aren't any health issues. Like, this is a guy who wants to coach. So it wasn't really like, I don't think he went into this with a ceiling necessarily. We didn't get a sense of that it was 2 years, 3 years, 5 years. I think that's more just teams forecasting that it's going to be difficult. It's going to be more of an unknown variable than, say, the Chargers with Jim Harbaugh, who's around 60 years old. You get at least a runway of 10 years in theory, where Belichick, it'd be harder to get that. And I do think that's in part why he'd be a better fit with a team that it will be a contender now. And I don't get the sense that Belichick, from our sources, looked at Atlanta as a true contender right now on paper. It was an intriguing job, no doubt, but it needed some work. Where, if Philly had opened, I think he definitely would have taken that one if it was available or offered, which we don't know. But teams with history that are contending now that could be open in the future, whether it's Dallas or, Chicago or some of those teams like that, could make some sense in that regard, where you have a clear window where you need to win now.
Catch the Rich Eisen Show every single day on the Roku channel, 12 to 3 Eastern, for free.